Hello, everybody. Welcome to the next edition of the Maracle Seating Podcast. I'm your host, Christian Maracle. You know me mainly as Cinema Sins 2 Expansion. Good to have you guys with me today. And once again, a reminder, I don't know why I keep saying this, but I love reminding you guys of what this show is about. I like to sit down and talk with you guys about certain topics of media, games, like this one. TV shows, movies, WWE events, reviews, predictions, stuff like that. Or mainly just stuff going on in my life. Today's topic, we're talking about the previous 3 Uncharted video games. Because Uncharted 4 Thief's End is being released this upcoming Tuesday for the PS4. So if you don't have a PS4, get one. And if you don't care, don't care. But glad you guys are here to listen to the next episode of the Maracle Seating Podcast. What I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to discuss the 3 previous games as a hype for the upcoming 4th and final game of the series. I'm going to be talking about the plot points, characters, what I thought was cool about it, what I thought was not cool about it, of the 3 previous games, Drake's Fortune, Among Thieves, and Drake's Deception. And so far, and by the time I'm done that, I'm going to be saying which is my favorite game, which is my favorite moments, and which are my favorite characters, and what I'm looking forward to the final game, because I love playing the Uncharted video games. I'm not much of a guy who plays video games, but okay, I love playing the Uncharted games. Although, well, I haven't played them in a while, though. Okay, so let's start off with the first game, Uncharted Drake's Fortune. Basically what this is all about is, the young guy, Nathan Drake, the treasure hunter, is looking for the city of El Dorado, which, as it turns out, is actually a gold statue. Well, the actual treasure itself, I think it actually is a city, but how should I know? It probably doesn't even exist. Plot really is about Nate learning things as he goes along. Hanging out with his friend Victor Sullivan or his future wife Elena Fisher. I'm gonna take a moment to describe the characters here. Nathan Drake, you obviously know him, the main character of the Uncharted games. He's like a male version of Tomb Raider. No, he's not really, but I kind of think that. Some people do, some people don't, but that's what I think. He's just a guy who likes to hunt treasures. He's been doing it for a long time in his life with his partner Victor Sullivan. And this one he is trying to get a big one, the lost treasure of El Dorado, and leads him to this roll credits Uncharted Island. He's pretty cocky. He's a youngster. He's a guy who likes making funny quips, and which is why I find him pretty entertaining. Even in dark situations, he still finds a funny joke. And speaking of his partner, Victor Sullivan, old guy, says in the 3rd game that he's got 25 years on Nate. He's got to be in his 60s by now for the upcoming 4th game. And I'm just surprised he's still able to do all this stuff. So, and Sully, of course, in this game, he's the mentor. He's the guy who always stands by Nate, even though at one point, at one level, he gets shot down. We think he's dead. Well, look at that. He's not really dead. As a matter of fact, he dies, but not really dies, in 2 of these 3 games. Of course, Victor is more of a guy who, he's also in it for, paying off debts, finding these treasures to do that. And at the same time, he's kind of an idiot because he just goes ahead and he tells our main antagonist, Gabriel Roman, about the find of a lifetime. And that's what causes all the absolute mayhem. Elena Fisher, of course you know her. What was she? She was the reporter. She was a reporter, yeah, with the video cameras. Who just first goes along with Nate to find the statue. Actually, not statue, sorry, the coffin. Sir Francis Drake's coffin. Which I'm still wondering, why did she go along with them in the first place if they were just going to ditch her? I mean, Nate even does say at one point that they didn't even have permission to be over there. But nevertheless, Elena joins in, and Nate and Sully ditch her, but she finds her way back somehow. I'm surprised about that, actually. I'm still wondering, how the hell does Elena know where to follow Nate and Sully when they just sped off? Because they never told her they were heading toward the Amazon. And from my looks of things, she never looked at any of those maps or anything. But of course, later on, she gets more into the adventurous type of a person, and then as the games go on, she just says, I don't give a shit about this anymore. Your villains in this game, Gabriel Roman, he's the main one. There's also his associate, Atok Navarro. Wait, is it Atok? I'll just say Atok Navarro. He's the secondary antagonist, though he's made... A lot of people say by the end of the game he was the real antagonist all along because he shoots Roman. Whoops, I just spoiled the ending. Who cares? Everybody's played it by this point. Gabriel Roman, the guy who Sully owes money to, also wants to take a look at this treasure and find it for himself. Then there's Navarro, who wants this. He already knows about the treasure's curse, and he wants to sell that poison to the highest bidder. Eddie Raja, a guy who has some history with Nate. He finds himself on that Uncharted island as well with his men, and he gets fired by Roman eventually, and he's the first guy to actually discover those demons or zombies that you see later on in the game. And the combat for this game, like the fist fights, there's some fist fights in there. Yeah, you can. There's an option to do a brutal combo or just simply keep pressing square 5 times. You'll just knock this guy out. Most of the time they can't really counter, but they do at times. There's also the gunfights. For 2007, the gunfights were okay. They weren't the best, but sometimes they got pretty difficult as you had almost 30 people shooting at you and trying to in different directions, and you gotta take them all on. As if you play that on the crushing difficulty, eventually someone's gonna get pissed off. But next to all that stuff in there, the guns, the fist fights, there's also treasure finding. You gotta find 60 treasures, I believe that, hidden in weird locations. So you gotta literally search everywhere. It's kind of almost like The Last of Us, where you're trying to get supplies and you gotta search every nook and cranny everywhere just to find supplies. In this case, find treasures. But the treasures things are completely optional, and the supplies in The Last of Us are completely you gotta get those in order to boost up your strengths and your weapons. But I'm not talking about The Last of Us right now. I might talk about The Last of Us in a future game, though, if you want me to. Finding the treasures, I honestly, whenever I played it, I never really cared for finding those. Though, at the time, I went ahead and tried looking for all 60 treasures. I think I found them eventually. As for the main treasure here, the big statue of El Dorado, as we know, it bears a curse that turns you into a freaking zombie. And, well, yeah, I would kind of think to myself that if it's a way for our heroes to go through all this big adventure and end up with nothing in the end, well, minus all that stuff that Sully borrowed from people who are too dead to care, I would say that maybe I would have been pissed off saying, go through all this stuff and leave with nothing. By the ending of the game, you find the treasure. Actually, before I talk about the ending, actually, I want to talk about, a cool moment in the game. Is, it goes from being, a dramatic, game to being an action game to being an adventure game to, at one point, turning into a horror game when you gotta go through this generator room and you gotta fight these zombies that pop up out of nowhere. And I'm like, that's pretty cool that they put in so many genres into one video game. So that's why I'm saying Uncharted Drake's Fortune was a pretty awesome one, and I'm not surprised at all that it won Game of the Year. Um, at the ending of the game, you find the statue. Navarro reveals he knows about the curse. He shoots Roman, blah blah blah, who just got mutated, and now you gotta save Elena from Navarro, and that ends up leading you to their big boat. As you're hanging out for dear life on a helicopter, you gotta fight legions of bad guys again, and eventually have a final fist fight with Navarro at the top of the boat, and basically, like, the final battle is just a little brutal combo. Square, triangle, square. Oh, he counters. Oh, now you gotta do it again. Square, triangle, square. Wasn't really difficult at all, no matter what difficulty you play it on. It's not really that hard to beat him. But so far, I thought it was like, when the game was done, Nate looks like he's gonna start a relationship with Elena. They will go off into the sunset with some treasure. And, well, I just thought to myself, it was a very, very fun game. It was so awesome. And then as time went on, I was like, oh, they're making a sequel. Here comes Uncharted 2, Among Thieves. And that was in 2009, and I was excited for that one, too, because the first game was so great. I wanted to see how the second one would play out. And that's where I take you guys to Uncharted 2, Among Thieves. Released in 2009, the plot of this one is Nate, this time, is going after the lost city of Shangri-La, or Shambhala, from the travels of Marco Polo. We go from Francis Drake to Marco Polo. Then the third game we go back to Francis Drake. The returning characters is, Nate. He's more more experienced, less young. He's more older in this game. More experienced in this type of travel and adventure. There's Elena. She returns. As it turns out, they're not really together. To those who actually thought that Nate and Elena would be together by the second game. But look at this. Nate is actually in a relationship with someone he has had relations with in the past, Chloe Fraser, who in this game is sexy as fuck. But Victor Sullivan, I gotta tell you about him. Like, this game, you see him a lot in the first game. Not really that much, though. He gets shot down, but then he returns later on, somewhere in the middle. This game, he's only shown for one level, one entire freaking level, and then he quits what he's doing, and you don't see him until the very last cutscene. Which is like, oh man, Sully's Nate's mentor, and this is what happens? That's probably why he doesn't fake die in this one, too, is because we don't really see him that much. And speaking about new characters, next to Chloe Fraser, there's also an old friend of Nate's. His name's Harry Flynn, who he turned out is one of our antagonists of this game. I almost said movie. I wish it was a movie, though. Harry Flynn, oh, look at that. No surprise. He's also British. Just like in the first game. Roman was British. Flynn is working for Nutcase, as he calls him, that a crime warlord named Zoran Lazarovich. He was a complete psychopath and is completely scarred, and he's also the reason they're going after this big city is because of this thing called the Chintamani Stone, which by game's end there is no Chintamani Stone. Compared to Roman or Navarro, Lazarovich is more of indeed the psychopath because he actually does assassinate his own guys just to get what he wants. As he once says in the game, compassion is the enemy. Oh jeez, I suck at making impressions. What is wrong with me? For other characters who are introduced later on, Carl Schaefer. He's an old guy in his 70s or 80s or something like that. Been living in some sort of village in Tibet. And he has experiences of the Chintamani Stone and what it does to you. And, well, I'm going to stop talking about the characters for a moment and talk about the actual gameplay here, because I know you guys are probably getting bored by all this character talk. The combat and gameplay this time. The fist fights, this time I would say they were okay. compared to the first game. Okay, yeah. It's a little improvement, but it's still more of the same as it was in the first game. And I'm just hoping that the upcoming fourth game is gonna surprise us with something incredibly different. Um, the gunfights, on the other hand, they're also more of the same from the first game as well. You're introduced to some new weapons, and you gotta face helicopters and tanks, which you gotta luck of the draw. You find an RPG randomly shown in some place, and boom, fire down. Either that, or you're using that one of those tanks as was shown during the train sequence, shooting down a helicopter like that. Um, but I would say that the gunfights and the enemies were more of the same. Although there are times where you actually fight people who have actual armor on them, like those giant, as Nate calls them, mutants, with like those Gatling looking guns. I don't know if they're Gatling guns or something like that, but they look exactly like it. So I'll just say they're Gatling guns. They got their armor is about as heavy as their weapons. It's like almost impossible to defeat them unless you have one of those Gatling guns or like an RPG. Thankfully, within the first number of times you see them, you don't really have to face them. But, as for finding the treasures, you can, there's more of those in this case. And, there's 100 treasures this time when you find them. And, yeah, I went ahead and found all 100. It took me literally, 7 or 8 times. Don't judge me, okay? It's hard to find those things. To me, they are hard to find. But as for, Shambhala itself, which you later see at the end of this game, I would pretty much say that, yeah, sure, it's like another one of those big cities that they say is lost, but when you're actually in there, it looks like as if it's in plain view of anything, and anybody could have passed over it and seen it. And yet, people still say it was lost. Which I still don't understand that. But what the hell, I'm not gaming sins, okay? I'm not Dartigan or whatever his name is. The treasure that Shambhala bears is not a Chintamani stone, because, well, there is no stone, blah. But the Tree of Life sap bears lo and behold, another curse. This curse turns you into, these big giant beasts that wear these costumes with crossbows, and by the way, the crossbows they are extremely powerful because you get stabbed by those things and they fucking hurt. But yeah, it's one of those situations where you're looking for this thing, but when you get there, it's, oh, that never existed. Oh, it was just this. Oh, okay. So what happens? What, do we get any of it? Nope. You have to destroy it and leave without it. So it's another one of those situations where you're going across going across the world, whether you're in Nepal or Tibet, or Borneo, and the first start of the game, Turkey. And you go through all that crap just looking for this one big treasure, and when you finally get to it, you're like, oh, it's another case where we don't get anything. Oh, well, what a shame. By the ending of the game, and this actually surprised me when I was first playing the game in 2009, it's the moment where Flynn actually detonates a grenade and he blows himself up and nearly kills Elena. She's believed to be dead by the ending of the game, and I actually thought to myself, holy crap, did they actually kill her off? But then I'm like, oh, wait, no, never mind. But because, literally 1 minute later, oh, look at that, she's okay, no big deal. She just got blown up and was supposedly injured, and oh, look at that, she survived. And once again, Nate and Helena, they share a kiss, and look at that, they're going to form another relationship, just like the ending of the first game. So basically, it's, instead of riding off into the sunset, they're watching the sunset as they're inside that village at Tibet. But I would say that the second game, compared to the first game, it was almost more of the same. Actually, it was pretty much more of the same plot with different characters and a new treasure. But basically, it's good guy looking for one thing, bad guy looking for it too. It's pretty much a race to the treasure, meeting up with each other as you make your way down there. There's also many puzzles in it, just like there was in the first game. And good guy fights bad guy. Good guy kills bad guy. Good guy destroys treasure, runs off before he dies, and basically saves the world. So it was more of the same as the first game, just with more amazing like battles and fight sequences. I really enjoyed the second game. And then in 2011, there's Uncharted 3: Drake's Deception, which, as of right now, is the longest one in the 3 games. The plot of this game, we're going back to Francis Drake. This is Drake looking for Arama the Pillars, which is yet another city, Atlantis of the Sands, that could easily have been discovered because it's apparently out in plain view instead of being hidden. It may have been in the Rubo Kali Desert in like the center, but it would still have been seen if like somebody like passed by it. So as you know, Nate's back for this. He's pretty much more of the same. Once again, more experienced, and this time more determined, because this is actually something he's been chasing for about 20 years now. You got Sully, who's actually, this is the biggest role he's ever played in these games. Elena, she wants nothing to do with these treasure hunts. She's only forced into it. Chloe's back as well. And she was only in it for half the game before she bowed out with one of our new characters, Charlie Cutter, who's actually a pretty cool guy, except for the fact that he's pretty claustrophobic, and at the times, I don't know, I think Charlie's more of a really pretty cool character in this game. He gets drugged, though, by one of our antagonists, Talbot, who's, as people describe, a younger version. Wait, what? No, no, it's not more of a younger version. He looks about the same age as Nate. He's a evil version of Nate. Same athleticism or stuff like that. Some people say he's kind of supernatural because he disappears out of nowhere a few times. Unexplainably. And you have our main antagonist, Catherine Marlowe. And, well, lo and behold, just like other villains, she has some affiliations, how you say it? Yeah, with Nate and Sully, as when Nate and Sully first met each other 20 years ago, prior to that game. She was among Sully, trying to get that Francis Drake's ring and that decoder device. And pretty much for 20 years, even though within those 20 years Nate was going after like the lost treasure of El Dorado and the Chintamani stone. But this was the one where he was just waiting 20 years for. I think maybe one day he realized, oh, look at this, I got a chance to get this. And he goes ahead and takes that opportunity. The combat in this gameplay, like the fist fights, this time, the bad guys counter a lot more. But there's actually more fist fights in this one than the others. A lot of them are kind of required because you don't have any weapons. Like even at the start of the game, the opening bar scene, which is one of my personal favorite moments of that game. But despite all that, you're fighting 10 guys who's trying to get you, and you manage to take them all on because a lot of them just take their time waiting while you take one guy out instead of all jumping on you. The gunfights, there's a lot more cool things to do. Like, for example, if like a villain throws a grenade at you, you can just throw it back as long as you hit the button at the right time. Which I thought is pretty cool as well. The treasures, there's yet another one of those 100 treasures to get. But as for the gameplay itself, as time goes on, like Nate travels a number of places. I think they started in England or something. At least I think that's where they started, London, at the start of the game, and then Nate and Sully went off to France, while Chloe and Cutter went off to Syria to find amulets lost amulets to, the upcoming, that treasure they're trying to look for. And, and then they head off to Yemen, that's where they've made up with Elena. They try to find this Atlantis of the Sands again. And after time goes on, they eventually do find it. It's another one of those cities, and lo and behold, it's almost like the first two games. You find this place, you find out that it also has a curse, because this time... Oh, that reminds me, I gotta talk about the hallucination scenes in this game. Where, first time I believe was when Nate was struck by one of those darts that Charlie was struck with earlier in the game. And he's, running through a crowd, and everything's, moving, getting smaller or getting bigger, and just, turning in weird directions. And then later on, when they're actually in a realm of the pillars, Nate actually ingests that water, which, as it turns out, is filled with a hallucinogenic agent. And literally all the ground, the ceiling, the walls, everything is moving. And when you turn around, it gets really blurry. And a lot of times I was like, holy crap, I actually feel like I'm fucking high right now. You see, this is why you don't do drugs, kids. Well, at least that's how I think it went. But yeah, there's also, as Nate said, there's something in the water, like a vessel of brass filled with that hallucinogenic agent. And anyone who ingests that, and apparently, I actually like those villains you meet when you're hallucinating. They got fire on their heads and everything. Kind of reminded me of Ghost Rider. I thought it was just so fucking awesome. At the same time, they were hard to beat because they could just move into different directions at incredible speeds. And by the ending of the game, Nate fires 3 bullets, and 3 single bullets, as Nate actually not Nate, Sully actually said, "How the hell did you manage to tear this place apart with 3 damn bullets?" It's a funny line, especially when they're going through that collapsing city. And let's see, as for the villain's death this time, Marlo, she dies by means of getting drowned in the sand. It almost reminded me of Lord of the Rings when Gollum had the ring and he was falling into the lava from Return of the King. Take my precious. This is my precious. Only difference was Marlo did not want to die, and she was actually offering the precious ring. One ring to rule it all. Holy crap, why am I talking about Lord of the Rings now? But anyways, Nate and Elena in this one are now divorced, I think. But by the end of the game, they decided to rekindle their marriage. And so by the end of the game, it's, once again, there's a lost city, a tortured and cursed treasure, and good guy has to destroy it and kill the villains at the same time, then make it out of there alive, which they eventually do at the last minute. So it's almost exactly like Uncharted 1 and 2, but they're still really fun because of the sequences that go through in those games. Anyways, that's Uncharted 3, Drake's Deception for you. Now I'm going to talk about which one of those 3 is my favorite game. My favorite Uncharted game is Among Thieves, the second game. That is my favorite one. Because, I love the battles, the train sequence is one of my favorite parts. All the times you're fighting those enemies, going through different places. As a matter of fact, I'm actually thinking maybe when I'm done with this episode of the podcast, I'm going to start playing an Uncharted game or something. And get myself hyped up for the upcoming 4th one. My favorite characters in this game, these three games, sorry. My favorite characters, I'll admit, yeah, Nate's one of them. I think he's pretty awesome because of his funny quips, his jokes, his sense of humor. It's just so awesome. Um, I actually also like Charlie Cutter. Even though he didn't really do much in the third game, he was still a pretty awesome character. He was pretty badass even when he was hallucinating and trying to kill Nate. Um, as for the villains, I actually liked Lazarevich. Lazarevich may have been like a psychopath, but he was like one of the perfect examples of a scary villain. That was very amazing. They did a great job with Lazarevich. And the best moments about the Uncharted 2 game, like I mentioned, the train sequence, that was one of my favorite moments. I also like the puzzles that go through it as well. Um, well, also, I like the third game as well. I like the second one the best, but Uncharted 3 is very close to that one, too. Because those puzzles, a lot of them were really difficult to do, but then all of a sudden you're like, oh, wait a minute, they're so easy. What am I thinking? Why did I just sound like that? That was just so scary. Um, um, as for the third game, my favorite moments indeed had to be the times when you're walking through these empty places before you fight the bad guys, and the puzzles you gotta do. And what was really interesting was the the trek in the desert scene where Nate is walking for 2 days without any water, and he's somehow able to have a major gunfight. I'm surprised he didn't go up to one of those enemies saying, okay, we're gonna do this, but before we do, could you please just give me some water? If you give me some water, that's all I'm asking for, then I'm gonna go back there, and then we can do this, alright? Cool? Sound cool? Nope? Okay. Run! That actually would have been pretty funny. Now I'm going to quickly talk to you guys about what I'm going to expect in Uncharted 4: A Thief's End. They say this is the final game. Naughty Dog says this is the final game of the franchise. So I'm thinking to myself, something big has to happen in this game. At the same time, I think to myself, while that something big could happen, at the same time, it could mainly be almost just like the first three games, at least by the way it would end. What I know so far for this game is Nate has a brother named Sam, who's voiced by Troy Baker, who voiced Joel in The Last of Us, so we got those two big characters almost coming together. It's really interesting, all this time, we never knew Nate had a brother, and I'm really excited to see how this is gonna play out. Even though this is obviously not how the game's gonna begin, what I would like to see is, from what Sam said in that one little video I saw with him and Nate when they actually reunited, he said that he had escaped from a prison, and I'm actually thinking maybe the first scene of the game could be the escape, where Sam actually escapes from prison, and you gotta control him to escape the prison. I'm thinking to myself, that would actually be a very fucking awesome way to start Uncharted 4: A Thief's End. If you could play more than just Nate. If you could play other characters as well. As of right now, this is a pirate's treasure they're going after. I don't know much details, obviously, because for one thing, I've been too busy, and plus I don't want to be spoiled. I want to think to myself, oh, I want to be excited for this. I want to wonder where they're going to go, if this is going to be the longest game in the franchise. I honestly want this one to be longer than Uncharted 3 because, I'll be honest, I don't want this series to end, but I know it's going to at some point. There's also been rumors of a major death going on in this game. Some say it's going to be Sully. And I'm like, they already fake killed him twice. Is the third time going to be the charm? And if so, how is he going to die? But the biggest rumor around here is that the one who's going to die is Nate. Which in some ways I kind of believe, but I don't believe at the same time. But I think to myself, if they actually go through with that and kill off Nathan Drake, I'm like, that is going to be literally the most shocking thing. Actually, it's not really going to be that shocking because a lot of people are already guessing it's going to happen. But it just proves that Naughty Dog has balls to kill off main characters like that. And if anything, the way I see it, if Nate's going to die, it's probably what it's going to be. His brother turns on him. They find they find something. Nate either gets shot or impaled or something like that by his brother. While like Sully and Elena see that from a far distance, Nate falls and dies, and then I think to myself, if that's the case, who the hell do you control the rest of the game? Or would that be one of the final cinematic scenes at the end of the game, so you don't have to control anybody? But then again, I don't really want to believe any rumors right now because I just want to play the game, and when I play the game, then I'm going to see how things will turn out. The excitement I have for this game is like, wow, I'm like really excited here. Because Uncharted has become one of my favorite video game franchises. I'm not one of those guys who plays stuff like Call of Duty or Halo. For one thing, I don't have an Xbox. I have a PS4. But I really like playing those adventure games. Like Uncharted and even Tomb Raider. Even when I was just a kid, I liked playing the old school Tomb Raider games. And even now, I occasionally like to go back to the old Tomb Raider games. It'd be like revisiting childhood. But basically, that's it for this episode of the Maracle Seating Podcast. This is me talking about the 3 previous Uncharted video games and hype for the upcoming 4th Uncharted game. Which, by the way, this leads me to remind you guys, I am going to be starting a new series called Christian Maracle Plays. And when I get Uncharted 4, here's the thing. I'm going to be setting up cameras, and I'm going to be doing some gameplay of Uncharted 4, my first experience playing it, and I'm going to share it with all you. If you guys are still listening right now, then you're probably going to look forward to it. If you're not, then you're probably no longer listening to my podcast. But if you are, hey, you made it up to now. So, I'm pretty sure a lot of you out there are looking forward to Uncharted 4: The Thief's End, but for those of you who do not know what this game is all about, you listen to a pretty awesome podcast, and now you're probably thinking to myself, I should try those games out. Or if not, that's okay. But everybody, here's to hoping that Uncharted 4 is going to be great. Until then, that's the end of this week's podcast of the Maracle Seating. I'm your host, Christian Maracle. I want to thank you guys for sitting down and listening to this. Hope I made your day, or night, or morning, one or the other, Once again, I'm Christian Maracle. I'm your host. And I want to thank you guys for tuning in on this show, and I will see you next time on the Maracle Seating.